I'm Steve Flavell, co-CEO of LoopUp, and LoopUp is a software as a service company that does remote business meetings, or if you prefer, conference calls. And essentially, we're all about making them just less bad than the world has had to put up with for the last 25 to 30 years of dial-in conferencing. We floated on AIM in August 2016, one of the first ones after the Brexit vote. Floated at £1, and we're around the 460, 470 mark now. We're a very contrarian play in this market, and I'm going to come on to that strategy. It's a big market, a £5 billion market with lots of troubles, and we have a very sort of consistent, efficient growth engine that's led to our current numbers. Those numbers look something like this, without dwelling on them in detail. On the left, pretty consistent revenue growth. So over the last 4 years, a 37% compound annual growth rate on the top line. And then below in the P&L, good gross margin levels, 78% gross margin, marginally increasing year on year, and developing profitability further down the P&L. I should say this was last year. We've since made an acquisition. I'll come on and talk about what those combined economics look like in a little while. The question we often get at this stage is, how on earth is this happening? Because if you look at our market, it's a pretty scary looking place at first blush. It's almost like the rogues gallery of enormous technology names. And it kind of begs the question as to how little old LoopUp is growing at 37% every year with virtually no money in this company. The answer to that starts, I think, with just a recognition of a truism about the world of conference calling. It's a technology space that's by no means new. It's been going 25, 30 years. And one thing that's very noticeable is after all this time, still around 70-odd% of the business world are just dialing in to conference calls with phone numbers and access codes. They're not using any software at all to help them have a better experience on these remote meetings. And you would think software might actually help, some sort of visual representation of the meeting. Even if you don't necessarily want to all look at each other face to face, you would think it would at least help to know who else is in the meeting rather than just staring at a phone that you've punched a number into. Why are more people not using software to give them a better experience? Let's rule something out. It surely can't be because people love dialing into conference calls. It's hardly people's favorite activity in their business day. It's fraught with annoyance and frustration. What's the dial-in number? I'm in Germany, what's the dial-in number for there? This access code isn't recognized. Then actually maybe you do all get on, but there's all those ba-doop noises as people are coming onto the call. Who just joined? Who just joined? The host is having to stress out about the mechanics of the call. Who's on? Who's still missing? Shall I get going? Shall I wait? Where's so-and-so? Rather than just calmly welcoming their guests and setting the right tone for their meetings. It's a painful experience. More so, those pain points lead to a lot of wasted time. This was a survey of 1,000 frequent conference callers. They thought 15 minutes were wasted on a typical conference call. That's about a third of the time that the world spends on conference calls, just going down the drain. A tremendous waste of value. And arguably more concerning still, of those 1,000 frequent conference callers, over half confessed that they really didn't actually know really who was on their meetings. They were blind. They thought they had some idea, but they didn't really know. Why on earth is this even okay, given all the money that the world's spending on enterprise security, cyber security, and it's kind of okay to go along not knowing who's on your conference calls? It's kind of crazy. So if it's not that people love dialing conferencing, why doesn't the world do something better? What is the reason? And it's for us, we've become more and more resolute on this as we've gone on in this business. It's all to do with how people learn software. There are, of course, exceptions to this, but generally, people tend to learn software by just giving it a go. You know, it's trial and error. It's a process of time. You jump in, you start clicking a few things, some things work out fine, some things don't, you put it away, maybe come back to it a couple of days later, have another go, ask a colleague, yelp for help to your PA if you've got one. You know, it's a process of learning, and you either end up becoming comfortable with that software or you don't. Now consider that norm in our world, the world of remote meetings. It's an unusually live situation. You're in real time in the hot seat with multiple other people beholden to you, your guests, who will tend to matter to you, and it just isn't conducive to this normal way of learning software, which is trial and error-based learning. You just want the thing to work. You want to get through your day without major pain and stress. And whatever you may think about dial-in numbers and access codes and all those frustrations, if you send out dial-in numbers and access codes and your guests can't get on, that's kind of their lookout. If you send out software and they can't get on, that's much more your problem. You've imposed that on the meeting, and you're in the middle of that. And people don't want that. Most people don't want that. And it's led to this sort of market situation. This is a framework from a book called Crossing the Chasm, a slightly simplified version of it, a book by a guy called Geoffrey Moore that's only become truer and truer as years have gone on since he wrote it. And his essential thesis was that winners in their target markets are rarely the companies that dive straight into the hearts of their mainstream majority of their markets. Much more often, the winners are the ones that focus, initially at least, on delighting early adopters and sort of specialist pocket groups within their target markets. And then through advocacy, time, word of mouth, associated usage, you so-called cross the chasm and become more de facto in the mainstream. And technology spaces, this has happened time and time again. And in software design, you know, it is the norm. In Silicon Valley, software coders design for early adopters. It's what you do. And in our market, it's been no different. There are plenty of great software companies that have designed great products for pocket specialist groups and early adopters. It's what you do. There's Amazon with Chime, there's Google with Hangouts, Cisco with WebEx, Microsoft Skype for Business, Adobe Connect. It's a pretty big bunch. And they've done a really good, varying job, but good job of doing what you do in software. The trouble is that in this market, the chasm refuses to get crossed. The mainstream majority, and it's just a fact, aren't using those products. They're still dialing in with phones. The chasm isn't crossed because of that unusually risk-averse usage situation for learning those perfectly good products that are fine and good and liked by the early adopters in the market. But it won't cross the chasm in this market because of the risk aversion. So in comes LoopUp. What do? We are doing something that would normally be perceived pretty stupid. You know, we have designed a software product specifically for the mainstream majority. Or if you put it another way, our product has been designed such that early adopters won't like it. It's not for them. It doesn't do enough. It would look woefully lacking in a feature comparison. But that's entirely deliberate because we're designing it for the mainstream majority who stubbornly won't move to software and stick with dial-in. And when you do that, the product looks rather different. It's very minimalist, less is more. You know, it's all about, for us, a prescribed flow that would annoy the hell out of early adopters. It doesn't give them anywhere near the optionality that an early adopter or specialist user would want. You do it our way, or you use a different product. And the result is, for that mainstream majority, they don't get scared in the heat of the moment, and they can use the product without any training and without trial and error-based learning. And it's working. You know, this is our new user base, all new users that come onto LoopUp over the last 2 years, which is not far off half of our user base. they're now not dialing in 75% of the time. Indeed, their guests are now not dialing in 55% of the time. They're doing it the LoopUp way. And that leads to one of our economic benefits, which is because guests who often aren't customers are joining the product in the designed way and having a better experience than they're used to, it leads to a network effect in the product. We're getting about 30% of our new business coming inbound, not through marketing, but because these people have been guests on LoopUp meetings and experienced the differentiation. And then we have a special way of selling. I won't go into all the detail, but we've designed this sort of team-based approach to selling. It's sort of it leads to a very best foot forward approach within the sales team. It's very scalable, very repeatable, and also very economic. For every pound we're investing in those new business pods on a fully loaded basis, it's leading to a present value gross margin return of 6. We recently bought Meeting Zone. We've had the keys now for 3 weeks. Meeting Zone is a company that, as you can see on the right, is slightly bigger than us. They're the blue numbers, we're the green ones, although they're not growing at our rate. They grew 6% last year versus our 36%. They're nicely profitable because they have a commodity product, and so they don't have an engineering and product team that takes a lot of cost. So they're a nicely profitable and cash-generative company. And we managed to buy them for 61 million when, on the day before the announcement, we were being valued at 177. The play here is to get scale on the LoopUp platform. The majority of Meeting Zone's revenue is non-differentiated dial-in audio conferencing. Our plan is to transition that over to the LoopUp platform, roughly doubling the scale of LoopUp meetings, which, everything else equal, we hope, will have a big play on the network effect in the product, leading to more people coming to us. So scale is a big positive for that network effect. And these are the essential deal rationale. By transitioning that revenue, we have the product network effect. We also have the attributes of the LoopUp customer base. Rather than Meeting Zone's churning revenue, we actually have net negative churn in our long-term base. If you look at all companies and customers that are more than 2 years old with LoopUp, the revenue net grows every year rather than erodes. So by transitioning it into our product, we believe it should take on the attributes of the LoopUp customer base as opposed to the attributes of a non-differentiated dial-in product. Now, they only grew at 6%, so naturally the combined growth rate of the company will be compromised. But because of this transition, there will be considerable operational savings, cost savings in this deal, and we can reinvest those cost savings in faster LoopUp organic growth. And we believe the outcome of this should be a double whammy effect, which is not only is this a sort of materially earnings-enhancing deal in the first full year of ownership, but also as a combined group, we have the reinvestment to get the growth rate of that combined group back up to over 20% by 2020, we believe. We're now very much engaged in that integration work, and we look forward to reporting on that. We've only had the keys 3 weeks, but we look forward to reporting on that when we next update the market. So in a nutshell, we believe we're in a good place because it's a big market, the differentiation is resonating, we have a strong network effect in the product, and combined with the way in which we sell, it leads to really efficient underlying unit growth economics in the business. And we think that's an exciting combination for the company going forward. Thank you very much.